Today on Ballistic BBQ, I'm going to be cooking up a buttermilk marinated, garlic herb crusted prime rib roast on the Lone Star Grill's El Patron. Let's get going. So I'm going to be cooking up a 3-bone prime rib roast. And the rule of thumb, if you're out there shopping for prime rib, is 1 bone for every 2 guests that are going to be dining. And that's, removing the rack of bones and slicing it. Personally, I always go 1 extra. I always grab 1 more bone than I think I need. Just, again, I'd rather be safe. There's some hearty appetites out there. So this prime rib actually is Australian Wagyu, and my local butcher shop, believe it or not, they were selling this beautiful Australian Wagyu prime rib for less than they are charging for their choice. This thing has got beautiful marbling, just a great color, but it's not as girthy as the choice was. It's not as much volume as far as, it's a smaller rib roast, but it's going to be amazing. I mean, the marbling on this thing is crazy. So what I did yesterday was I put it in a marinade of 2 quarts of buttermilk. And I love marinating meat in buttermilk. It actually can add to the tenderness because of the enzymes in there, but it adds a rich flavor that is unlike anything else. And kind of taking a cue from the Argentinians, they have a few dishes where they're actually marinating their meat in milk. So I love it, especially on chicken, but beef, it's really good. This is going to be an amazing, amazing prime rib roast. So we're going to kick this off with making a herb blend for the herb crust. So in the old molcajete here, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of whole black peppercorns. You don't have to use a molcajete. You don't have to use whole black peppercorns. You can just, grind your own pepper, just get pre-ground. But I love using this thing. There's a magic to it. And I always like to add the things that are going to be the most difficult to kind of break down. And I always like to add the things that are going to be more difficult to break down first when I'm going to be using the old molcajete here. I've had this thing for a lot of years. And of course, you could use a food processor. You don't have to grind your own pepper if you don't want. It'll be good. But there's just a magic to using this thing as far as I'm concerned. And you do get different textures that you're not going to get from a standard, pepper mill. Okay, so that's pretty nice and grounded here. Ground. Now I'm adding 1.5 tablespoons of pink Himalayan salt, and this is very large rocks of salt here. Again, you don't have to use pink Himalayan salt, but there's something cool about that. That's looking good. 6 cloves of garlic. So the moisture in this garlic and this ground salt and pepper is going to turn into a paste. You can pick these things up, these molcajetes. I mean, if you have any like Mexican mercados or stores that sell Hispanic ingredients, a lot of times they'll have these things there, and you can get them on Amazon. They're not that expensive, and they'll literally last you your lifetime. I mean, be able to give them to grandkids. So that was 1.5 teaspoons of fresh rosemary, and this is 1.5 teaspoons of fresh chopped thyme. Right here we have 1 teaspoon paprika, 1 teaspoon crushed red pepper, 1 teaspoon of dehydrated onion flakes. Put that in there. It's all combined and ground together. Again, now we're releasing all those oils from the fresh herbs. And there we are. Let me break out that prime rib roast. So here's that prime rib roast after a full night of marinating in buttermilk. And I went ahead and trussed it. Normally what I'll do is I'll, cut the bones, like remove the rack part way. I leave it connected where it's kind of tying into the cap, and then I'll kind of press it back together and then truss it up just to hold it together. On this cook, I'm going to be using a rotisserie. I wanted to leave the rack intact, but I did truss it just to keep that. Sometimes that cap, the spinalis, as it's cooking, the fat's rendering it and it can open up. So just to hold it together, I went ahead and trussed it with 2 ties just between the bones there. So I'm just going to kind of work this in, get it to blend up with the buttermilk that has coated this roast. All right, there we are. This looks good. It smells amazing. There's a lot of flavor in this paste here. What I'm going to do now is get it on the spit, then I'll meet you at the pit. That rhymed, and I didn't mean to do that. As I said in the opening of this video, I'm using the El Patron for this cook. As I was kind of planning the cook, I watched one of Chris's from Lone Star Grills videos, and he did a prime rib roast on the El Patron, and he cooked it on a rotisserie. I thought, I've only done one rotisserie cook on video. It was a chicken. And I haven't used the fire control system yet by Fireboard. It's got the fan and everything. So I thought I'm going to do that. That's what Chris used, and it worked out really well. I've been playing with this fire control system, and it does a really good job. So anyway, I'm burning lump charcoal, and once I get the meat on, I will be adding some chunks of hickory. I'm running the pit between 250 and like 275 degrees. Once the roast hits 115 degrees Fahrenheit internal, I'll be pulling it off, resting it, and then putting it back on the pit with the charcoal grate elevated so we can get a nice kind of a sear on that crust, get that crust nice and set. Well, let's get it on the cooker. We have to get this collar on. So since I am using that fire control system, I have the vents, the lower vents fully closed. And there's that peak at the fan. It's plugged in right at the bottom of the firebox, basically. I have the probe for my pit thermometer going through that upper damper, and it's tamped down just a bit. So as I said, at 115, the roast is coming off, resting. Then we'll set it up for the, I don't really want to call it a sear, the setting of the crust. See you in a bit. All right, we've been cooking now for about 2 hours, 15 minutes, and it's ready to pull. It's at that 215 mark. And just look at that color. It is gorgeous, and I cannot even explain how good this thing smells. Look at that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this off the pit again. We're going to rest it for about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll finish it off with that nice high temperature setting of the bark. All right, the roast is rested. Let's get it back on the pit. So I'm going to go ahead and raise the charcoal grate. And I'm just going to sear this off, door open, for about a couple minutes or so. All right, I am happy with this. Allow this to rest. Then we're going to have some prime rib. Right, and here it is, all rested. It's really looking good, smelling amazing. So first thing I'm going to do is obviously untruss it, then get those bones off. I'm just going to follow this line of bones on this rack here. Just follow it down. these bones that come off. Actually, one of my favorite parts of a prime rib. I think the only drawback to, you know, rotisserie cooking is you do get a hole. It's an aesthetic thing, but the results of rotisserie cooking, just when it comes to the evenness and it's self-basting as it's going. Beautiful. And I'm making reasonably thick slices. Me personally, I could eat them, you know, 2 inches thick, but this is going to be, like I said, we're going for reasonable here. Look at that. It's funny, we're going out to dinner tomorrow with really good friends of ours. And we're going to a place where my wife and I both, when we go there, we order prime rib. We were talking about it this morning as I was getting ready for this cook. And we won't be getting prime rib. We're having this tonight. So it's kind of a fish place anyway. So we're going for fish. All right, let's see how I did. Just by smelling it, I know how I did. It smells so good. And I'm like shaking right now. So juicy. All right. So that first bite was a bite with a crust. It's like a perfect amount of salt. And you definitely taste, you know, the different herbs, that little pepper. You know, there's a pop, just ping of a little bit of a burn. You know, nice amount of garlic. You can't argue with this, the results here. I mean, I know there's people out there that like their meat, you know, more on the well done side. Medium rare is my personal preference. It's where you're going to get the juiciest, most tender cook is medium rare. And as far as the technique, you can see color to color. You know, even the cap, that you know, that spinalis, you don't have that big gray band coming around. This is just a beautiful, beautiful cook. I really love that cooker. And that fireboard fan, the fire control system, it's almost cheating. I mean, seriously, it's like, I mean, comparable to cooking with a pellet cooker, except, you know, you're using real charcoal or wood instead of pellets. Anyway, thank you guys for stopping by. I love this cooker, and I will be doing a brisket on it. I know people have been asking me to do briskets, and I will be doing a brisket. The only thing that's been stopping me is just so much meat for such a small family. And I do give it away. The neighbors that I used to give the bulk of my cooks to, they moved out. So sadly, they're gone. But I'm going to be doing a brisket. But keep those suggestions coming in. And if you're not subscribed, please consider hitting that sub button, ring the notification bell, thumb it up if you like it. I hope you did. And wow, I'm feasting. I'm having prime rib for lunch and dinner tonight. So this is my lunch right now, literally. And then going out and having fish tomorrow. Anyway, again, thanks for stopping by. And let me see, cut my cheers piece of meat off. See you on the next video. Cheers.